Nicholas and I will introduce ourselves again. We don't want you to think that we think that you forgot who we were, but it's for the sake of the recording.
So let's start now. I just click record. So again, good morning, everyone. Nicholas Stewart, Strategy Director at Complete College America, and I'm joined by my colleague, Brendan. Okay, I thought you were going to introduce yourself, but that's
Brandon
okay.
Provost. Sorry.
You just said. All right. So again, today is about academic maps, and one thing I want to start a little bit in terms of expectation of the webinar. Today's webinar is not going to be an all be all that after this hour your academic maps will be brilliant, will be awesome, and that's it. This is not a 1 hour process. As we'll talk about, this is much more about for you to start thinking about different things about how to better use academic maps. What also you should start thinking about how you can optimize what type of content and format that you need to start compiling so as to best provide to your students, but also how to best utilize the maps. I think that's one thing that I want to start at the beginning, really, before going any further, that maps should not be seen purely as an academic advising activity where it only concerns the student and the academic advisor. I think that there's a lot more to it than that, and we'll talk a little bit about that here. So by the way, you're able to see my screen and all that? I want to make sure that, excellent. Thank you for the thumbs up. So why academic maps? I think that it's not just because we need something else to do. I think maps, one, I think if you look at your students for a lot of times, and I think that's unfortunately a sad trend rather across the country, is really a lot of times students graduate with additional credits, and additional credits mean additional time, means additional costs, and there are a lot of problems, obviously, with that. And the thing is, obviously, a lot of times students are registering for the wrong courses. They're not, courses that do not count towards graduation, that may duplicate some of their efforts in the same area moving forward. Difficult, catalogs are difficult to understand if students are even, aware of the catalogs. Let's be honest, I used to work on catalogs, but the only people who read the catalogs are the people who work on the catalogs. If you're in charge, if you're part of your responsibility is to edit the catalog, then you're the one who knows about it. But honestly, most faculty, and I'm not putting, it's not their fault, is that nobody knows about it. I mean, students basically, I'm old enough that I remember when I saw George say, like, someone actually handed me a catalog, like a hard copy catalog. And then like the year after, it was like, yeah, no, we're not doing this anymore. It's online now. You have to go look at it. So for the last like 15, 20 years, the catalogs are purely online, and we don't really tell students where they are or how they're used. And quite honestly, even people who are used to catalogs, they're not easy to read, to consult, and especially to use for degree plans and things like that. So that's one thing. The degree requirements are also not clear, and it always frustrates me when I look at some institutions. Like, well, where are your maps? Are you actually sharing those with students and things like that? And for some reason, some departments or some institutions seem to think that maps are something to hoard. That well, the only way you're going to see your map is if you actually make an appointment with your academic advisor, and your map doesn't leave the office; it stays with me. It's like, why are we trying to do this? I think that it has to be clear for students. So to me, working on maps, and I think the process that I'm going to be working with you is an amazing opportunity, let's be honest, to re-examine your processes, your degree plans, your policies, to really talk about, is this the right math for your program? As you're reevaluating your academic maps, now's a great time to do that. So we're going to talk about math pathways. Is the learning outcome for the math that you have in your degree, is it the right one that aligns best with your major? Let's talk about meta majors. I think that it allows for a great opportunity to really start, for students to start exploring majors and programs of study within the same discipline, if you will, that leads to great careers. So as you start exploring maps, you're going to see that there's so many uh, common grounds between different programs in the same, like in social sciences, and in the humanities, and uh, the health sciences or natural sciences and things like that. They're perfect ground for the first for the first year or so to create meta majors and really allow students to explore and rethink about, like, what are their goals and what major they want to pursue towards their majors, or their careers rather. Same thing with milestones. What are the milestones? Is it also, are there great, their preferred grades um, for particular courses? And if you're looking at predictive analytics, they're always, I think the first thing that I learned about predictive analytics is always about, well, if we know that a student is in political science, for example, as a major, and we know that in American government the student gets a C, well, that student is 17% likely to graduate with that particular major. So that's a great early indicator. Do we? And I'm putting those numbers out there, by the way, that out of my head. Those are not real. So I don't want, I saw people like, starting writing, do not, this is not the right number. Okay. It's just that usually the first gateway course for a major, if there's a C or below, there's a significant drop in terms of graduation rates for those students in this particular major. So those are great opportunities to start looking at those grades, those milestones, what are the preferred grade and why, as well as again, look at policies, about repeats. Is there, do you have something in the books um, about repeats, especially for milestone courses or gateway courses, and so on and so forth. And again, maps to me are great opportunities to include IR and data and reporting. And again, academic advisings for early alert and proactive. They're great opportunities to really see the progress of your students in towards their degree, as well as for scheduling, forecasting. So exactly, you're going to know how many students are in your majors. You're going to know where they are. So as a scheduler, it's a lot easier for me to see, to expect, and to forecast, like, how many students are going to need this particular course. So I'm not wasting time or resources, when honestly, in terms of seats and courses that basically um, may not make because the demand is simply not there. So the one thing I hear that a lot, and it's about, again, why don't students follow the map, as if everything was on the students' perspective, and you see those particular um, factors basically that may impede progression and graduation. What I really want to focus on today, and I think we're really working with you guys, is going to be with the institutional factors. Uh, just like CCA is talking about how the performance gaps and the equity gaps are not the student's responsibility, but really on it. The onus is on the institution to change the performance gaps. Uh, when we're talking about good academic maps, it should not be on the students. It should really be on the institution to change that. And the one thing that I hear a lot, by the way, is on don't know of the existence of maps. That also lays on the institution's lap to make sure that the communication is there. So the first one, I think that some of you have attended the 15 to finish and the proactive advising. Obviously, maps go very well with 15 to finish strategy, as well as advising. So the first thing to me, and when we're talking about a good academic map, the path has to be clarified, and that, again, we're talking about the rethinking of your opportunities of your program. So look, and sometimes it helps to have different pairs of eyes, students, and I have a homework, and I think I put it on the next steps as well that was shared to you earlier. But have someone else look at your maps. Are there any prerequisites that are hidden for some of your courses? I had one map for a health science at my previous institution, and the the third year courses, like there was a quantitative or qualitative course in the junior year level course that had a prerequisite of college algebra. But when I looked at the core curriculum, there was no math required. So students could take quantitative reasoning or college algebra for their math requirement, and it was perfectly fine. Where it was not perfectly fine, because if students took quantitative reasoning, by the time they're juniors, they're not able to register in the actual course that requires college algebra. So in this case, we had to make a change to the core curriculum requirement, like a prerequisite or a prescriptive core math course, because otherwise you're basically having a junior now having to take college algebra in order to register and progress towards their degree. So, are there any hidden prerequisites in the course? So make sure that you go through all of these. There are inconsistencies in the curriculum. How about, again, we talked about the math course, the order. Um, and I'll talk about that in a second. But sometimes the order, not so much about one, two, three, but also combining different courses in the same semester. And this is where I think talking to academic advisors and having academic advisors at the table really helps, because you do have that perspective from an academic advisor who has been talking to students about, students are really struggling when these courses are together. And I think I had that same discussion with academic advisors where the feedback I received a lot was U.S. history and American government for freshmen, for the first year students, should not be in the same semester. Those were two heavy reading classes, and a lot of students are struggling to keep up with all that reading when in the same semester. Fine, let's split them, one in the fall, one in the spring, and that problem is resolved. There were others that for some reason, and I, just trying to look a little bit more rigorous than needed, there was a STEM major map that included calculus and two labs. Why are we trying to do that to our students? I was like, how is that helpful in any way? Other than trying to flex your muscles and say like our major is tougher than the others. That does not help you. That does not help students. So, is there a way of actually splitting those labs and really rethinking about how we're doing this for our students? What are the milestones? And why? What are the learning outcomes? And just trying to also um, not archive, but catalog them and write them, put them out there. And to me, using milestones and explaining what on your website, why are these particular courses especially important? What are you going to learn? How are they going to help you move forward in your degree? Let let's put it out there. Let's share that with students. Let's not keep it. Let's not wait until the student is actually registering the class on the first day with the instructor is talking about the milestone or how that's going to be important. Let's put it on a website or link it to the academic map so that it's clear as well. Uh, let's look at the first 9 hours. If you know a little bit about CCA, we're talking about the 9 hours, and there's a lot of great data that shows that students who register during their first year in 9 hours, or about like three courses that are relevant to their majors. We're not talking about like again the 3,000 level courses, but early courses, the first 1 or 2,000 level courses that are relevant to their majors early. Let's not wait till they're late sophomore, but during the first year, students are more likely to actually persist and see connection between their majors and actually graduate. So, and we're happy to share that data. And I think that Brendan may have shared that data with the 15 to finish um, presentation, as well as, like I said, the prescriptive electives or gen ed core, courses. What are they? Why are they, preferred? And sometimes it helps because I've seen maps where the 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 list of in the general education is like pick one of those 25 courses. Who's going to look at all 25 courses and as a student and pick the right one? And sometimes it's just going to be like, I'm going to pick this one because why not, or it's offered at that time. But is that actually helping the student connect with their majors, with their programs of study, and actually the learning outcomes of that course? Are they actually relevant to what they need to do and the competencies that they're going to learn in that course connected to their courses? So let's again reevaluate what we have on the books and sometimes pull, like I said, the learning outcomes and the reason why those particular courses are currently listed. And let's ask ourselves, like, is this what is, is needed for this particular student experience and progress in their degrees?
And Nicholas, before you move on to the next slide, or I can talk about it here. One of the things at Complete College America is we all recently worked and have deep campus experience. So I'm going to make a confession to you all, which is at a previous institution where I worked. We had academic maps that were set up in our banner system. We were a banner school. We were still doing the hard copy catalog. We had them on our website, and we also had them in DegreeWorks. And one of the things that we unfortunately found out was all of those systems did not necessarily talk to each other, and were sometimes brought up to us by outside entities, and sometimes we found it inside, that what we showed on one academic map did not match what it said in a different academic map, which was different than a different degree plan. And so I share this confession because I would urge all of you to do some kind of audit on your campuses, because there's nothing worse than saying, here's the information that we're sharing with our students of what it means to get a degree at our institution, and we tell it to you in 3 different ways with inconsistencies across. So there's also the consistency within your map. So
Sorry, and can I just say one thing? And we can talk about that, the communication aspect with the coding. So if you do have DegreeWorks, for example, or something similar, is what's represented in the catalog, on the website, and in DegreeWorks the same? And I can talk about like also the curriculum changes in a minute, and the problem exactly to what Brendan was saying.
Yeah, so sometimes it's a matter of bringing what's invisible visible, because it was nobody's responsibility to necessarily check those until we made it somebody's responsibility to check those, much to our embarrassment. So as we move on, what we want to talk about is academic maps. It's more than just a list of courses. And so we'll talk about the 5 components here. And we'll show you an example as well. So in that first part where it says the narrative, short description of what it means to do that program of study and specific degree requirements. So if it's a 2-year school, how those articulate with either statewide or region or institution-specific transfer agreements, or sometimes there's competitive entry programs such as within nursing or allied health programs. This is usually just a few sentences about the major itself. And from there, we'll talk about the sample schedule. And this is course by course. In this example here, you'll see these are specifically laid out. We'll show an example in a little bit where you might have a little bit of a choice of choose from one of these specific classes. But I want to point out, if anyone knows the book, The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz, sometimes less is more. And this is where we see students unnecessarily swirling because of the information we give them. So in his book, Barry Schwartz, he shows that when individuals have more options to choose from, they make worse decisions that are less of a benefit to themselves. And he shows this in different ways. The classic example is when you have insurance plans and you can choose from, a large number of 30, 40, 100 different plans versus if you have 3 to choose from. Actually, individuals make worse choices because they get overwhelmed by those choices. And so in the same way, we see this with the courses of here are the specific courses laid out that you will take that are required. And when there are options, it's not here, choose one humanities course from a list of 50 humanities courses, but here's 5 or 8 that have been selected that fit with this major. Now, what I will say is there's always off-ramps. If a student says, hey, I'm really interested in a humanities course for my elective that isn't part of this list, you meet with an advisor, and the answer is absolutely you can. But when you think about the habits of mind for that specific discipline, right? What is your history department chair saying for that specific elective? What are the courses that fit best with the habits of mind for history? So you're helping guide students. What we also see here is recommend a minimum grade. You'll see that in one of the columns. This example shows a student with a B, and would be the minimum. This would probably be a STEM student if that's what's required in college algebra. It's alerting the student, hey, this is a really important course and you need these skill sets in which we show by a grade to be able to progress. Doesn't mean you can't follow that program of study if you don't, but maybe that's a time when you have that individual conversation with an advisor to be able to talk through what were the issues, what's the rigor, here's the data that we know for students who get below this grade, how they progress through this major. And so it's an early information piece where you're communicating directly with students and becomes an early alert as well. In terms of milestone courses, those can be key to that program of study where they need to fit. So students are not waiting to their last semester to complete their English or math. And they can also be program specific, right? So if you're a business student, there might be a specific entrepreneurship class that needs to be taken at a certain time within a student's career. And those milestones can also go beyond courses. So you could be looking at, let's say within the junior year, you're saying at this milestone, you need to be talking or doing your first internship, right? Or at this point, you need to be starting to do some career exploration, more than interest inventories, but maybe building some resumes. And so you can build in milestones that go beyond just the courses. The employment opportunities, we'll show an example of this, but this is where you can link to ONET and other sources where you can say students in this degree connect to these specific careers. Within these careers, here are salary ranges. So that way students know when they're looking on the website and they're looking at these academic maps, all of the information, not just here's the courses I take, but here's how it relates to my larger goal for after I graduate. So these are 5 components that we see part of an academic map that again go beyond just the courses taken. One more point that's not written here is academic maps should be for the entire student degree. So it's not just for that first semester or first year, but for the entire time it takes, whether it's 2 years at a 2-year school or 4 years at a 4-year school. In the 15 to finish or stay on track webinar, we did talk about having those for 100 or 150%, depending on the needs of your school. So one of the things that we talk about, and I'm going to give you all who are listening live, as well as those who are watching this recorded, a homework assignment. How accessible are your clicks? And here's the homework assignment. I don't want you to answer the question. I want you to phone a friend, right? Call up a friend. It's COVID time. Have a good chat, catch up a little bit. Maybe it's a family member, and then ask them, someone who's not used to your website, to go to your college or university website and say, find our academic map, time them, see how long it takes, and then ask them how many clicks it took. Academic maps are a lifeline for students, right? So what happens is we work at our colleges and universities, we know where to find things. The question is how accessible are they to students? They should be accessible within 2 clicks. And the way that you're going to know this by asking someone who's not familiar with your college or your university, right? Now, the website also gives you a little bit more information. This is your chance to gloat, and I would say this goes beyond your website. So what's special about your program? One of the other webinars I talked about how a faculty member within philosophy would hold an open house every year, and he would get 50 students there where they would hear not only from other philosophers, but they would hear from folks in other industries talking about why philosophy is important, right? This is your chance to be able to sell, not just sell your program, but get students really excited, right? Why are they in this program studying? Not just because they have to do something to get their degree, but this is the excitement of it. This is where it's going to lead to a career. We talked about those habits of mind. We'll share this PowerPoint with you as well, so you'll be able to click on, and these minute videos, right, are a great way where faculty are reaching out virtually, where they can talk about, here is why you want to be part of this program site, this degree, right? 1 minute, it's short, it's quick, it's to the point. But think about it, if departments and department chairs saw recruitment for their students almost as a way of not a competition, but a friendly competition, where it's, I want you being part of it, not just if the student happens to choose our major, fine, you're in our major, and I'll see you in our spreadsheets. We want you, right? Think what that means for the student who's being told this is the excitement, right? So being able to do that in a short video, and then those co-curricular experiences, and those can be for credit, they can be not for credit, they can be paid experiences, not paid experiences, but it's connecting students from what they're doing inside the college to the world outside.
And can I just add about the minute video? Find your most charismatic person, and not just someone who reads, from the screen. It's like like you should be excited about sociology because come on, you're again, to me that's a recruitment tool. It's a way of connecting with the students, get them excited about like, hey, this is what you're going to do in the next 4 years, and so on and so forth. And I can't stress enough about the careers associated with the majors. Uh, because especially how many times have you heard like, oh, you're majoring in what? what do you want to do? A barista in Starbucks? Like ha ha ha. Like the whole liberal arts and English and history and philosophy majors kind of thing. Having a list of careers associated with English, with philosophy, on your website is going to be able to dispel those myths. And I think that I can stress, like I love that website, the from University of Delaware. It is very extensive because it includes like all that the information around their alumni, but it lists also all the students who graduated with a particular degree, and you can choose which major they are. It lists where the students are currently working, in what industry, what their job titles are, and so on and so forth. So bringing that information, I think from ONET as well, and so many other resources out there, really helps open the mind of students about, oh, that's what I can do. And I think it also shatters the myth of one major, one career. That the only way you can get to this is if you go, from to law school. The only way you can get there is from political science, or something like that. Or what do you do with political science? There's so much more than just law. So I think that helps students, and it helps you when students actually come to see you as an academic advisor or a career counselor, or the discussion, to have different conversations. It's like, yeah, this is why it's connected to this particular major or this particular career, because of what you're learning and career competencies and so on and so forth.
And to that point, we often think about recruiting students to our colleges or universities, but we forget about that recruitment to the major. As I talked about in one of the other webinars, students often think college, but then you have to start thinking, okay, within college, what's your specific major? Well, within that major, exposure can mean a lot. So students may not be thinking of all the different possibilities. So within criminal justice, for a student to be able to say, wow, I can become a probation officer, I can become a police officer, I might do this and then do criminal justice reform work. I could be doing this and be doing work with youth through juvenile corrections. I can be doing this through the corrections system itself, or even go on to be a DA. Suddenly might go from, okay, I think criminal justice police officer, and not being able to see this wider range of what it can do. So lots that you can do with that. As we move on, it's important that with academic maps, we have to be thinking about who are the end users, who are the stakeholders. We often think about the students, and that's the obvious one because they're the folks who are saying, okay, this is what I need to match my degree requirements. But those end users and those stakeholders that we need to think about is how are advisors actively using the degree maps? How are they making sure that they're updated? How are advisors and faculty talking to each other? Because we know very often advisors will find points of convergence and also points of issue within a degree plan. And so that conversation needs to be happening between advisors and faculty. Now, sometimes faculty say, well, that's the advisor's role, but faculty should absolutely be informing, as we talked about the habits of mind. If we start thinking about when you have electives, what are the recommended electives, or even selected ones where students can choose from these 5 or these 8. That should be a discussion between faculty and advisors. And we recommend sitting down and creating those together, right? So similarly, how are the scheduler and the recruiters using these? So schedules, when you start thinking about room assignments and making sure that the courses are offered at the right time so that they're not opposed with other courses that are required for that degree plan. And same thing with the recruiter, when they're going out to talk to prospective students, when they're talking to parents, when they're talking to K-12, this should be a point of pride. And there's also ways that you can use these within dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment. You start saying what are courses you can be taking in the high school and how those impact your larger college trajectory. So there it is, the homework assignment. Sorry, I talked about it a little bit earlier. Again, find out how easy it is not only to find it, but then have some folks look at it as how easy is it to understand? Very often they're in college speak once you find them, but how easy are they to understand? Now, when we talk about—
are they realistic? Like, so can students really graduate in 4 years with those maps? Because that's what to me is like scheduling. So you can put it on there, but if you don't schedule the right courses, students are not able to graduate in 4 years because that one course that is a requirement is only offered in the fall, but there are not enough seats or whatever it is. So that's something to me, the scheduling, and that's where I think we want to make sure that it's actually actively used by the scheduler to really look as how many students need to be, or need to take the course and schedule it appropriately.
Now, as we moved from maps to registration blocks, right? This is a lot of text But these are samples, and what we want you to see is, the blocks of humanities that would be for one major, business would be another, and the social sciences would be another. You see the courses, you see the course titles, and you see the days of the week. What's particularly of interest is if you look all the way to the right, the humanities courses start from 12 and then go into the evening. For business, those are in the morning. And so thinking about for whether it's a returning working adult or for someone who is an 18-year-old, 20-year-old college student who still has realities of life, how are you scheduling these in blocks so that they're able to work, whether it's part-time or whether it's full-time, take care of family members in a way that allows them to do that and is also building cohorts within their peers. And so once you have those maps, then it's taking it to the next step to say, how do we use those maps to build those registration blocks? And finally, we have some examples for you to see. When we share this PowerPoint, you'll be able to click on the links to schools such as Indiana University, Florida State, Middle Tennessee, and West Virginia, Parkersburg. The examples here are from the Community College of Denver. You can see some of what we talked about, where there's both the narrative on the left, and you start seeing those course maps. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but then there's choose between a couple of courses, and those are limited. On the right, what you see, these are accordion files, so they open up with the plus sign. But if I were to click on that bottom one on the right, where it's a stackable, this is a 2-year college where I can see the stackable certificates that are part of that degree. Moving up, job outlook and salary information. If I opened it up, this isn't dynamic, but not only do you see sample jobs, but you see salary ranges, right? So for the information for students to be able to say, boy, I'm really passionate about this, or I'm deciding between 2 different degree paths, I'm really passionate about both. How important is my salary outlook, and what are those options? Internships and service learning, right? So what are the co-curriculars that we talked about that you can do outside of those? Because this was a 2-year, the 4-year agreement shows statewide transfer articulations or articulations specific to that school. If I know I'm doing a 2-year degree and my goal is to get that bachelor's, how does this 2-year degree fit with those 4 years? As well as academic supports and other options. So as what we're trying to show you is some specific examples going from the idea of what's in an academic map to seeing what it can actually look like together.
And to dispel the myth again that an academic map is just a nice PDF, like a one-pager with only the courses listed as to how to graduate. There's a lot more to it than that, because that's what students need. I mean, they need that information to really understand why they should be excited about this program and how they're going to get to the end, and then what's beyond that to that process. So definitely look at those websites. I really like the CCD, not just saying that because that's where Brandon was before coming to CCA, but again, very easy to navigate. They're all on one page. So I would discourage you to have them in different colleges and different websites and all that. Let's bring them all together because as students are trying to navigate this, they don't really think about it at your institution from different colleges. They look at your programs at one university or one college. So good academic maps. Again, we're talking about the collaboration between faculty and advising. I already talked about, so that make sure there's a good student perspective around this, and there's clear communication that, if a faculty member is making decisions, that the reasons behind are clearly communicated to academic advisors so that they're able to talk to the students and provide the reason, again, the connection as to why this particular course is relevant to your major, to your program study, or even career. So it's trickled down. And honestly, it may not be relevant for your particular institutions, but what we see a lot, especially when we have faculty advisors who help students at the later end, so the 3rd and the 4th year, those faculty advisors are not always well versed in the gen ed and the core curriculum requirement. So having both together, like both experts in the gen ed and the major specific courses together in the same room can really help with the order and again the learning outcomes and how it connects and so on and so forth. Think about also having flexible like academic maps. So if a student comes in with AP, IB, dual enrollment credit, if you have transfers who come in, not having it so rigid that like, oh no, this course is only offered at this time, and like, uh, you're 1 year behind because, and you're coming in with this particular credit and not the other. So thinking about how it can be flexible, especially for part-time students as well. How can we actually accommodate um, for different institutions? I always recommend obviously having a 2 year, a 4 year plan for, if this is your degree is an associate or a bachelor's. But in some cases, if your population is like 85% part-time students, why not also have a part-time map about, well, for you, it's going to take you, say, 6 years. This is a 6 year map, is going to get you there. Not letting students do the homework in their head about like, oh, how's it gonna work? Working with academic advisors to really create a longer map for part-time students. Again, not to say that we should not encourage students to take 15 hours and be full-time, but we recognize that it's not always possible for all students. So providing them the information they need to know, for them to know exactly like, if I'm going only part-time, if I can only take like 3 or 4 classes at a time, how long is it going to take me, and what do I need to do? How am I going to graduate with this? The format has to be easy to understand, and that's why I think like you saw, it's not just the course number. So ENGL 101, you know that, especially if you're working in the catalog, you're an academic advisor, you're faculty, you know exactly what, or BCGL, for you, you know exactly what that is. If I see BCGL 205, I have no idea what the course is, what the title is. So making sure that we provide that information and not just the acronym. Remove the jargon as much as possible. Students don't know it, and again, this document and this website is meant for everyone, not just those in the know and those in the at the institutional level. So making sure that someone reads it, it's clear, and we eliminated jargon. The process for curriculum change, I think, is one thing that, as I mentioned earlier, is something that you really need to look into. What is the process? I would recommend at least no more than once a year can students can someone make changes and justify it. And as Brendan was saying, like having 3 different maps, one at the department level, one at the advising model, one in degree works, and so on and so forth, usually is a lack of communication between those who make curriculum changes that are not being trickled down. The communication is not clear, or someone who the coder for degree works, for example, is not in the room to, when those decisions are being made or when the curriculum changes are being assessed and things like that. So I'm not a fan of curriculum changes for the sake of curriculum changes. I think that to me they have to be a lot of good reasons. Again, it does not help students when we keep changing the curriculum and the degree requirements just because what? I think if you're not able to actually end my sentence and just like, well, because it seems to make sense, that is not helping students. Like, why are we making those changes, and how is that relevant, and how is it actually going to help all our students by changing the curriculum and the degree requirements? And again, the option to include co-curricular activities, I can't. I'm a big fan of that. Again, I think we have to understand it's sometimes hard for departments. I get that, but to understand that the experience of college does not only happen in the classroom. What other activities, what other aspects of the degree that we need to include in the degree maps on your website that would help students progress and learn and grow and get a better connection to their degree? So I have one quick example, and it's not easy to read, so pardon pardon the slides. It's very text heavy and it's not really meant to be read in this case, but the way it is spread out is that you see, on the left about different activities that, they need to take. So obviously take the right classes in the different areas towards graduation, but there's also about academic advising, apply. So how can actually turn it not just into theoretical, but also where can you actually do it? What are the aspects of the graduation? Connect with peers, so student organizations and things like that. Where do you see that? Thinking globally, so actual activities and graduation. So visit University Career Services office. So listing those steps so that it's not, again, just a checklist that students need to check. What else do they need to do, and how else are they going to benefit from the experience that you are able to offer at your institution to help them grow? And again, to me, co-curricular activities are great opportunities to, again, uh, fill the gaps, and to really, again, I keep using the word growth, because to me that's what it is co-curricular. I can also make more sense as to what I'm learning and the competencies I'm learning in the classroom, and actually apply them. We touched on that earlier, how maps are a great tool for academic advising, especially proactive advising. It removes, when you have a clear degree plan, it removes all of that transactional aspect that academic advisors are too often tasked with, which is sitting down with the students like, okay, let's talk about what classes you're going to be taking next semester, and trying to work with the schedule. If you're able to remove that, or just take 5 minutes because the plan is set, like this is it, these are the courses, it, I know it, let's work. Do you have any questions? No? Great. So the rest of the 30 minutes, 45 minutes appointment really can talk about other things, about coaching, about how can we grow, talk about how well you're doing, talk about the different resources available on campus, or as it says here, act as a success coach to really help the students work through different processes and different questions they have. Maps are a great way also for proactive advising in terms of guardrails. So you're easily able to do, by pulling the reports, looking at your students, are they registering in the right courses? How well are they doing? Are they registering for the right amount of courses towards their graduation according to their plan? So that the maps, I think, is one of the academic advisor's best friend, because you're able to actually be an advisor, not simply an aid to registration and enrollment. So I think that in this case, it really helps that particular aspect of it. And one point I want to emphasize again, and I can't stress enough how I love maps, and I love working with them and designing them. But the issue is also that what we don't think about, or we take for granted, is how do we help students on board into the right map? Like what type of resources that we provide and information that we provide for students to make sure that they make the right decision as to their careers, their majors, and their programs of study. So that's why I think, to me, having clear, where do you want to go is really helpful. And this is where we're talking about purpose. Brendan mentioned about the issue of choice and too many options. And I think sometimes schools pride themselves like, we have 100 majors. But what do students pick the first time is going to be accounting, because it's the first one that is listed in the drop-down menu, and they don't know, and they don't want to read all the way to women's studies, all the way at the end there. So, and they also don't know the difference. I apologize, Jennifer. Some they don't know the difference between sociology and psychology. So what information are we providing them to the students so that they make an informed decision about their credit? So not providing that information, leaving it up to them, really leads, unfortunately, to the excess credits, the swirling, the students who keep every other week ends up in your office is like, yeah, I'm thinking of changing my major. Why are we helping not helping students provide by providing them relevant information? And I think the map, like why you should be excited, the career aspect, that's something that needs to be there to help students. And quite honestly, to me, this is the component of the map that has to be active. We have to actively engage the student with that information, not just hope that the students start looking at that information and make an informed decision. What are the activities that you have during admissions, during orientation, during your first year seminar that ask the student to actively engage with their decisions, and what their goals, what their aptitudes, their skills, and their aspirations. Like, why you pick this major? Do you know what you're going to do? Do you know what careers are associated with that? Do you know about the other majors in the same discipline, in the same meta major? Let's talk about that. So bringing assignments, bringing different assessment tools to really help support the students to make an informed decision. And by doing so, you're not only helping the students get on the right track and create the purpose so that students now understand and are much more secure in their choices as to why they want to pursue this particular major, but it helps in terms of major stability. It reduces opportunity gaps because we're talking about the implicit bias sometimes of directing students towards one major as opposed to the other because of their race, ethnicity, zip code, what high school they went to. So it's like, oh, this may be a little too difficult for you. You may want to go there. When we know that, unfortunately, African American students and Hispanic students tend to be underrepresented in the well-paying jobs because of some of those biases that happen, without that particular information. So those are just some of the points, that I want to emphasize. Again, those are just for Houston Community College, by reaching out to the students who are undeclared and having a conversation one-on-one, you see a decline in terms of students by the first day of class of how many of them are undeclared, because now they had a conversation, they had an outreach by the institution, talk about what do you want to do? What are you interested in? Let's talk about different options and different majors and careers that we can offer and can help you achieve. Same thing with EAB. And again, not advocating for you to get EAB, but the good thing they do and is a little bit like Netflix. Like, so I hear you're interested in accounting. Great. Here's more information. And by the way, you may also be interested in finance, marketing, and these, other majors. Here's more information about these particular actions. So the student, as they are logging in, are able to actually see information to, again, confirm their choices or explore other options that may interest them. And again, expand their options, because they may only know about accounting. They don't know necessarily the other options that fit, or the same thing, they know about psychology, but they have no idea, about sociology, anthropology, or other things that may really interest them. Let's talk about that and provide that. And by including that information, we're talking about like a quarter of the students who change majors on the spot, even before registering, because now they have an informed decision about which map they want and which degree plan and career pathway they're interested in. And I won't go into this, but again, by providing that information, you also reduce the number of students who change majors down the line. So those are the ones that, those are the things that, the overview basically of academic maps. Do you have any questions? There you go. So any questions, comments, concerns, we're happy to answer them now. We're happy to also take notes and talk them a little bit greater length when we meet with you guys one-on-one by institution. I'm opening up the floor.
A quick question, particularly for those who may have already started it at their universities. How do you, because we don't, well, we're working on it, put it that way. We're working on the academic maps and we're going through that now because we just started in terms with, I believe it was Degree Works. But how do we get the faculty, I guess, to understand, or the chairs maybe of the departments to understand the importance of academic maps? Not all of our departments have academic maps. They definitely can't be found on the website. And so it's hard for me, who as a faculty advisor to first year students, for me to say, okay, these are the classes that you need to take when I can't even find it in my own catalog, or it's very difficult. Forget about the 2 clicks. Like we're way past the 2 clicks.
Yeah. I mean, how do those faculties even know how students graduate from their degrees, from their departments?
That is a really good question. I don't know. And I know it's a little bit harder because I straddle the fence by being an adjunct faculty, but my main job, of course, is over on student affairs side. So it's a little bit, you know, and you all know this, it's just a little bit interesting.
Well, I'll throw out some ideas as well with what Nicholas is saying is our faculty or department chairs and departments given reports of their both number and percent of students within their major that are graduating, and how is their accountability tied to that? So when they're asking for a new faculty line, shouldn't there be some justification with how they're doing for students? So there should be a reason then to be able to say, this is what I was saying, is like we, not just in the recruitment, but we care about how our students are entering and getting through our programs, so that they're going to be excited. I mean, I saw some of the faculty resistance, although we had maps, but when it came to limiting some of the number of electives, it's like, well, why should I ask for, you know, limit the number of electives outside of my major? And then we had to have that larger conversation of what it meant for those habits of mind and owning your own program for students to be able to get through. But I think there needs to be some data and some ownership and some accountability there.
Yeah, and I think you can talk about, you know, bringing into, well, what do you hope your students, by the time they graduate, you know, what are the competencies? What are their learnings that you need to, that you want the students to have? Well, how do you know that they actually have that when you don't have a plan? I was like, you know, where's the learning outcome happen when I don't know which classes their students are taking or they need to do? How's it hodgepodge? So by creating a map, you can guarantee that the students who graduate have the right learning outcomes and the right competencies in these courses. Let's work together to create a map to ensure that those competencies are achieved by the end of the degree. Otherwise, there's really no way of graduating. You know, is this someone who basically is in a silent, you know, in a little room, who basically points to that student like, you are now ready to graduate? I mean, that's not how it works. You know, like we need plans. The student has to be aware about where they are in their progress towards their degree. So I think accountability, and honestly, I work at Georgia State, and I'm not trying to, you know, put anybody on blast or criticize them, but for a long time, the departments didn't even know who were their majors. Like you could ask some departments and like, so how many majors do you have? And they're like, I don't know. And it's like, so, but how do you know how to schedule the classes? How do you know who needs what? You know, what type of support, how close they are to graduating? And they couldn't answer that. If the student was not well known by, you know, by the chair or by some faculty members, they were on their own. And that's a big problem. We're talking about swirling. We're talking about, you know, big barriers to graduation. We want them, you know, we're happy to get them in, but we want to make sure they get out with their degree. And if we, you know, by not providing the support, we're not helping them to progress towards that degree, that's on us. So I think that the maps, that support, that accountability and clear data as to where they are, how can we support, and what are there any barriers? You know, are there some courses that you know have a high DFW rates among majors? Let's talk about that. You know, do you know? Have you looked at the data in terms of grade distribution? How often do you offer some of the milestones? So if a student fails a milestone, are they 1 year back now that they can graduate in 4 years? Now they can only graduate in 5 years? Is that so? Having those types of conversations with, you know, with faculty, and not putting it on them necessarily. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying that it's, you know, it's faculty's fault who are, you know, no, I don't want maps. But just talking about, like, you know, maps are a tool to help students progress, and they're also a tool for faculty members to make sure that they're best able to serve students where they are and what's the next step for learning outcomes, for scheduling, advising, and so on and so forth.
Great, thank you so much. You've given me some good tips.
So unless there's other, again, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to have, like, you know, one-on-ones or, you know, to really discuss. So we are at time and want to make sure that we are, you know, conscious of your time and respectful of your time. So we will stop the recording now. We will end the, and we will be sharing the recording. Brendan, I'm saying yes.
Yes, we'll determine how that will be, but we will be sharing the recording, and we can also go more in depth. We're going to be scheduling quarterly meetings as well.